This is the Welcome to Humanity podcast with thought leader and transformative psychiatrist, Dr. Fred Moss. This show focuses on the betterment of humanity on a global scale. Each episode will leave you enlightened, inspired, and ready to make an impact in your world. Welcome to the show. Welcome to your life. Welcome to humanity. Here's Dr. Fred.
You know, Sara Safari is with us today, and the intention today is to really kick off what is likely to be an ongoing podcast that I'll be doing on a regular basis in the years to come. Ryan and I have been talking about podcasts for, maybe 3 to 5 years. I was on a podcast with Ryan long before podcasts were even close to popular. No one even knew what one was on the first time that I was on with Ryan and his friend Bo about 10 years ago, maybe even longer. It's just a thrill to be able to finally host my own podcast and for us to have reached a point in our development where that's what is being called for by the universe around me. And so today we have Sara Safari with us. Sara is a friend of both Ryan and me. Ryan, I should mention, is the co-producer of this particular podcast and many to come. And so Ryan knows Sara from a previous setting where he had interviewed her because of how interesting she was. I met Sara in a course that we were in together, a landmark wisdom partnership course. And I had met Sara on the same week that Ryan wrote me to ask me if I knew Sara. It was just like a tremendous amount of serendipity. I think it was the second weekend of the course where we had actually sat together a bit. And I got to learn a little bit about what this seemingly tiny woman of small stature is really up to in the world. And I can't wait to share that with my listeners, because as tiny and delicate as Sara Safari is, she is, in fact, the absolute opposite of that. And so, again, it's just an honor, a pleasure to have Sara Safari with us today. So thanks again for being with us today, Sara.
Thank you. I feel so honored, and I'm really excited for this conversation that we are going to have.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. Hey, it's Dr. Fred here. Before we dive into today's conversation with Sara Safari, I just want to take a minute to let you know that I just finished putting together the audiobook version of my soon-to-be-released book called The Creative 8. So the book teaches a surprisingly simple method for healing that utilizes creativity and self-expression. As a listener to the Welcome to Humanity podcast, I want to give you a completely free copy of this audiobook as a thank you for listening to the show. Go to welcometohumanity.net/creative. I've used this Creative 8 methodology with both psychiatric patients and coaching clients alike for several years, and I get fantastic results. The method takes less than 5 minutes per day to implement. I know you're going to love it. Download your free copy of the Creative 8 audiobook today at welcometohumanity.net/creative. Now, let's get back to our conversation with Sara Safari. Let's get right started. I mean, let me say a couple things. You know, Sara, I didn't know who you were. And it's kind of funny that if people don't know who someone is, then they don't know what it is that they're up to in the world. And we make our assumptions. In fact, you know, we see someone who looks some certain way or dresses some certain way or talks a certain way, and then we make our assumptions about what they're up to. And I think more than anyone I've ever met, you were a source for me of my pre-assumptions not being accurate. I still had you as a wonderful person, but I sure didn't have you as the front edge trailblazer that you are and really what you're up to on the planet. So I can't wait to hear a little bit more about where you are these days, even if it's different than where you were before. And so you can tell my listeners and tell our listeners a little bit about what moves you and what turns you on and what you're up to in the world. So thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you for all your kind words and nice, beautiful, very, very kind and sweet introduction that you gave. I get that a lot. Every person that meet me in person first, after a bunch of emails or phone calls, they're like, we thought you should have been a little bit taller and bulkier. How come you're just so small? And I'm like, I don't know.
Right. You are, because you are who you are. That's, I
Yeah,
guess, what did.
exactly. But this journey, this amazing journey that it hasn't finished, and I'm learning every single day, and I'm making millions of mistakes every single day, is it started 7 years ago out of participating in a landmark course.
Hmm.
In the class, the leader said, come up with a project that is so big and huge beyond yourself, something impossible. And I was just sitting in my chair thinking, what is something impossible for me? And I thought about many, many, many things, but none of them sound impossible to me until somebody behind me started talking about Mount Everest.
Mm.
And I just heard the word Everest and the light went off in my brain. I thought, that's it. This is the impossible, because I've never been hiking before. I don't even have a pair of hiking boots. I hate cold weather. I've never been camping. This is so out of my comfort zone that I'm 100% sure I'm not going to do this. And
Hmm.
that I was just supposed to pick something impossible. So I just picked that. And the leader said, you don't have to accomplish it tomorrow. Just take the first step. And it was,
Sarah, just to put this in perspective, at least for our listeners, can you tell us how tall you are?
I'm 5'4".
Yeah, you really are, and that's stretching, right? I mean, you're kind of small, and how about how old you are, Sarah?
Well, I'm 38 years old.
And on this lifetime, I think, right? As
Yeah,
38 years old.
I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And okay, well, let's continue. Let's hear a little bit more of what happened after you decided to take this first step, because our listeners probably think they have an idea where this thing is ending up. A little do they know. So please continue.
So I kind of, the first few mountains that I was climbing, I kept failing and failing and failing, and I never made it to the top of any of the mountains. And at one point, I decided to quit. I just thought, this is not for me. I'm not supposed to be a mountain climber. I don't even have any experience. Let's just quit. And this is just, I'm skipping a lot of stories here that later on we can come back and dig deeper into these stories. But just to give you a highlight of the whole story, the whole big picture, I decided to quit. And the same day that I decided to quit, I got a new job offer to teach electrical engineering and computer science at California State University, Fullerton.
Right. Congratulations. Great job.
Thank you. And so I started teaching, and 2 weeks into the teaching program, I kind of was bored and I was looking for another faculty who could go hiking with. And it's funny, everybody introduced me to the same person, and I went to his office and I realized that he's the founder of the organization called Empower Nepali Girls.
Mm.
And 17 years ago, he went to Nepal to do a research about maternity with one of his PhD students. And he realized that some of the girls disappear from rural villages, from the schools at the age of 12.
Mm.
And he realized that there is this belief that men who are HIV positive, they think that if they sleep with a virgin girl, their HIVs get treated and they get well.
Mm.
So they buy the girls really cheap, like $50. The girls get raped, they get diseases. And even if they survive and go back to their villages, they can never have a normal life.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I was sitting in my chair. I was just looking for another faculty to go hiking with. And this is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Like my whole life turned upside down. I just couldn't go back to my normal life knowing that this is happening. So therefore, I just told him, I surprised myself by saying again, you know what? I was training for Everest. I decided to quit because I didn't have enough motivation to train for such a thing. But now, hearing this story, I want to raise money for these girls. I'm going to raise $1 per foot of any mountain that I climb, including Everest, to raise funds for these girls to continue their education. And he told me that the cost for one girl to go to school one whole year is $170. And I
Okay.
realized it's just so easy to make a difference in Nepal. I just thought, even if I only raised $29,000, which is the elevation of Everest, 29,000 feet, that's enough for 150 girls. And
Mhm.
even if I do that, I would be happy. So that's
Yes.
how it started.
All right. So that's great. And now you've kind of wet the whistle of our listeners by letting us know that, of course, that's just how it started. And I think everyone knows that, or everyone, I'm sure, anticipates that something like you getting to the summit of Everest took place. And in fact, something like you getting to the summit of Everest did take place, among many other things, however. That also took place on the side. And since you've done that, can you tell us a little bit more about some of the excitement or some of the surprises that you might have met on the way up Mount Everest?
Yeah, so I trained and trained and trained, and I climbed many, many, many mountains. And finally, I was ready for Everest. And when I was climbing Everest on April 25th, 2015, at 20,000 feet, a 7.8 earthquake struck us. And so I was climbing an ice wall, and so imagine me climbing on a straight wall. It's like 30 feet wall. It's only ice in the most unstable part of Everest, Kumbu ice fall. It looks so dangerous because there are pieces of ice, size of a tower, size of a car, who are hanging, and at any moment they can break down.
Wait a minute. Now, you said it looks dangerous. Can you actually tell me something like it's not as dangerous as it looks? Because that sounds about as dangerous as anything there is on the planet right there to be climbing up
It is
that.
pretty dangerous. Yeah.
Even when there's not a 7.8
Yeah,
earthquake going
even
on. Yeah.
without, yeah, exactly. Even without a 7.8 earthquake, they always tell us to walk as fast as we can because that part is pretty dangerous. So
Okay.
imagine, it's so unstable. Even without the earthquake, there are so many avalanches happening all the time. And now there's a 7.8 earthquake, and I'm not just standing on my feet. I'm hanging from from an ice wall. And if your listeners have watched Game of Thrones, the ice wall in Game of Thrones, that's a kind of an ice wall that I'm talking about.
Okay.
Uh, so, anyway, the earthquake happened.
Oh, Sarah. Oh my God.
So, like, imagine at that moment, the only thing that I'm thinking about is, did I ever get any training for an avalanche, earthquake, combined on an ice wall at 20,000 feet? And I'm searching my brain. I don't have any
Right.
information. I don't know what to do with this.
Right. No, not your average education there. Not
Yeah.
not not too many people have been trained on what to do when that occurs. That's right. That's right.
And so I couldn't see anything. I couldn't breathe because there were like bunch of avalanches happening at the same time. There are pieces of ice falling down, and the noise that they made was like a rocket taking off. It was so loud and scary.
Mm,
I couldn't breathe and I couldn't see anything. And I just climbed up past the edge, clipped myself to the anchor, and I thought, this is it. This is the end. I'm gonna be
yeah.
buried alive under the snow, and there is no chance. And like movies, I saw my whole life right in front of me.
Right. Hmm.
And I was really upset because I thought, oh my God, so many people told me not to go and I didn't listen.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting, Sarah. Just taking a moment about this, your recall of this exact second in time that you're talking about. I also was in a nothing like this, but pretty. If it wasn't being compared to this, it would have been a pretty hair raising event myself that had me pretty certain that the end was seconds away. And what's so surprising to me when I recollect it is that what I was thinking at that time isn't about fear. Like you said, there were many people who warned you against this. And in some ways, you're letting them down, right? In some ways, it's like, oh,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
should have known better. Some sort of shame or guilt is what showed up
Yeah.
rather than being afraid of death. Like you don't have time to be afraid. Am I right about that?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I felt extremely guilty, and I just thought, oh, I wasted my life.
Yeah.
And but then at the same time I was a little bit happy, not happy, it was just a little bit of content, thinking, well, at least I'm dying for a good cause. At least I had a cause, and that might bring some awareness. But I wasn't thinking that right at that moment, but I think later on I
Hmm.
convinced myself that way. And so we couldn't continue, we couldn't go back down because all these ladders that we crossed, there are 50 ladders in Kumbu Icefall over crevasses, and they are extremely dangerous. So all these ladders were so unstable or broken or disappeared that we couldn't go back down. So we had to go continue up. And then finally, after 8 days, we got rescued and we went back down. And now I was extremely angry because I just raised money for the girls to continue their education. But that day, because of the earthquake, 10,000 people died, 100,000 people lost their homes. And so even the girls, they didn't even have enough food or water. So priority here wasn't education anymore. And,
Hmm.
I was so worried for the girls, because this is the time that the traffickers, the human traffickers, that's
Ah,
exactly when during the disaster they can go to their
right.
families and say, well, you don't even have a place to stay and you don't even have money to feed your kids. Let us take care of them. And that's how it starts.
Now, let me put this in perspective. Did you stay in Nepal then when you got back down, or where were you? Where
Yeah.
were you physically? You stayed in Nepal.
Yeah, so we were in Kathmandu for after 8 days of finally arriving in Kathmandu. So, because from the place that we were, we took 3 different helicopters to arrive in Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal. And that's where some of our girls are. So, the Empower Nepali Girls organization, we have 300 girls in 14 different villages in Nepal. So now we arrived in Kathmandu, and I knew there are a bunch of our girls here in Kathmandu. So I went one by one, tried to find them to make sure they are still doing well and they have food and water and shelter and a place to sleep at night.
Hmm. Now, Sarah, were you with other people? Was there? Do I hear reference to a little bit of a team that you were with?
So in my climbing team, it was 6 of us plus 2 guides. And in my team, nothing happened to people in my team, but there were other teams that they lost people on the
Hmm.
mountain. But my team, nothing happened, thankfully.
But on the other hand, you did mention, I heard this right as well, that 10,000 citizens died
Yeah,
with this earthquake, and
yeah,
100,000 were lost their homes instantly.
yes, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
That's
All right.
exactly.
That's quite a picture you're painting. Keep going, please.
And then I came back down. I was extremely angry and traumatized. I just spent like 760 days of my life. Every single day I was training and fundraising. So if you met me 7 years ago, I was this very shy person. I couldn't even go to my mom and ask for $10. And now I had to go to perfect strangers and ask money for other perfect strangers that I don't even know. And it was just so out of my comfort zone. But since I wasn't asking for myself, it made it easier. So imagine, like, it's like 760 days. I'm fundraising every single day. I am training twice a day, every single day, to prepare myself for Everest. And then finally, when I'm on it, the earthquake happened. So I was disappointed, angry, sad. I was dealing with so many things. And I felt extremely guilty because now I could just fly back to United States to my comfortable house, but there are so many people homeless, so many people who lost their lives. I was just couldn't go back to my normal life for a few months after the earthquake.
Now, Sarah, for the sake of time, I think we glossed over I guess, 8 days. Is it 8 days between the initial earthquake and when you're down, or how long is it all the way?
8 days.
8 days. So in those 8 days, it was pretty harrowing, pretty hair raising. I've seen some videos that you've made, and extraordinary, just extraordinary. And what's more extraordinary for me as you speak to it is that your willingness to bypass the level of adventure that it took from getting where you were to where you eventually had to go. And so I just want to honor you as a human. I want you to get that. I really want to honor you as a human just for those 8 days. And I get that you're talking about in a subjective way that you weren't feeling that good about things when you got down. But just even getting down and whatever it took to go through all the transformation, and it did take a ton, Sarah, as you know, there's something about your humanity that has it be just an honor to have ever met somebody even who walked during those days to then create what you're about to tell us for the people who you now are committed to making a difference with. So I just want to thank you for your own personal humanity there, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I went to the town in Kathmandu with a group of my climbing team, and we were looking for the girls, trying to find how they're doing. Finally, we found a few of them. They were sleeping on dirt. And it was funny when I found the girls finally, the very first thing that I asked them was like, where were you sleeping? Do you have water? Did you eat food in the past 8 days? And they said like some of the neighbors brought us some food. So they weren't complaining about not having water, not having a restroom, not having a place to sleep. The very first thing that they asked of me was when we can go back to school and continue our education.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. If it was me, I would ask for food and water and a shelter. I wouldn't care about
Yes.
food anymore. It was just so inspiring seeing how powerful and resilient they are. That it was just kind of, I have lots of pictures and videos of those moments that I would love to share with you in case you wanted to add it to this podcast. And I think it just that I got so inspired from their response and how they were dealing with this trauma that I just thought I cannot be feeling low for them. I need to uplift them and I need to be stronger for them because they are strong for me. And I just said, you know what? And they were worried about me being on Everest and all that. And I kept telling them, don't worry, we're going to go back and we're going to build back all your homes and schools. And I'm gonna go back to Everest and I'm gonna climb it again. This life happened, like this just happened. This was one incident. And they were just so responsive. Like when I think about those moments, I'm still processing. It's not that I
Yeah.
ever feel that I'm done with that. I'm still processing. I'm still learning. I still remember some of those things, and I think I'm gonna be processing this incident for the rest of my life. But
Sure.
every single time, I think the response that I got from the girls really helped me to move through the trauma and everything that I experienced.
Well, again, I don't want to interrupt you for too long, but I just want to, again, let you know that even as someone who's listening for the second or third time to some version of your history, your story here, I want you to get that just that story is thoroughly inspiring for me as a person, like what I'm up to in the world and what I'm holding back in the world and what I hold as, near and dear to me, like what really matters. And then what really matters for the people that it matters for. These are the kind of questions that instantly get posed in my head, and I imagine in my listeners' heads as well. So please continue. It's just a beautiful, beautiful story. Sara Safari is with us today.
Thank you. And so I came back home and I decided, I thought this is a very important story and it needs to be shared with the rest of the world. So I decided to write a book. Wrote a book about the girls. The first book was Follow My Footsteps. And then I wrote another book called Above the Mountain's Shadow. And then I translated the book into Farsi in Iran. And then I wrote a textbook with my co-author, Dr. Jeffrey Cutler, about leadership. It's called Making a Difference for Universities. And I just thought I need to share this story. And I never ever wanted to write a book in my life. I never looked at myself as an author or a writer, but I just thought there should be a way for me to share this story. And I cannot reach out to the rest of the world if I don't write a book. And if there is a person out there who's thinking about writing the book, I think all human beings, we have all great stories and unique stories, and we owe it to the rest of the world to share these stories. It doesn't have to be perfect. Perfect doesn't exist, but we can. I think we are responsible to share these stories with the rest of the world.
Just beautiful. Amen. Just fabulous advice, and coming from you, it's something almost that turns into a responsibility, almost an accountability or an opportunity that awaits all of us because our stories really are unique and beautiful. It's
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I decided I don't want to teach my girls to give up on life. So I told them, I'm going to go back and climb Everest, but not just Everest. I'm going to climb 6 more mountains on top of Everest. I'm going to climb the 7 highest peaks on 7 continents. And not just for empower Nepali girls, let's add the rest of the world. So I said, I'm going to climb for 7 organizations who are empowering women globally, and one by one I met different organizations, the leaders of the organizations in Europe, in Middle East, in Africa, all over the world, in United States, and I started fundraising for them, again same as before, $1 per foot of any mountain that I'm climbing for that organization to help the girls continue their education, or if the girls were victims of abuse and violence. It's been happening. It's been going so well. I'm meeting so many amazing, great people. I'm failing. I'm learning. I am, and I say failing, not in the negative way. This is just the verb that I'm using. It's really a positive word because it means I'm trying really hard and I'm pushing myself and I'm learning more and more. It's been an amazing journey since then.
What is the term that you just defined for yourself? Say that word again.
Failing, fail like failure.
Oh, failing. Thank you.
Like a lot of people ask me, how did you decide to do this? Or a lot of people ask me, why? You aren't you scared of failing or not making your quota? And every single time I say, even if I save 1%, even if I can provide education for 1%, it's big enough, it's good enough for me. And I'm hoping to reach a higher number of people, but 1% is good enough, and I never allow this to stop me. That's what I was referring to.
Yes. So where is your trek path now? How many have you done? How many are in front of you? What's next? What are you doing?
So I climbed 6 out of 7, and my number 7 is really my number one because number 7 is Everest.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
You've not been to the actual summit of Everest yet. Is that what you're saying?
exactly.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. So it's a work in progress, like everything else in life.
That's so interesting. You set out to like create a project for your landmark course, and you're like, I don't know, something. And then you're like, someone says Everest, and you get sparked. Yeah. That's what I'll do. I'll do the Everest thing. And then you sort of get some traction, and you're like, nah, no. And then a little bit, and then pretty soon there you are at the base, and then you're at base camp, and then you're actually doing it. The determination that's involved here, that like, I don't think there's anybody who's ever trained for Everest the way you did. And in the meantime, climb the 6 highest peak in 6 other continents. Am I right about that? Probably you don't know anybody who trained like that, still having not climbed Everest.
In a mountain climb, we have a very small community of mountain climbers, but I know a lot of people who are climbing the 7 highest peaks and already achieved it. It's
Yes,
but like there are a lot of people. I mean, a lot. I mean, in the sense
sure.
of the number of the climbers in the world. And since I'm in the community of the mountain climbers, and I have a lot of friends in that community, so I know a lot of people who are trying or already attempted or already summited all those mountains or climbed some of them. So I know a lot of people, but
Now, Sarah, there are 7 continents on the planet, and one of those continents is Antarctica. Can you tell us a little bit about your Antarctica travels?
yeah, I climbed the highest peak in Antarctica, Mount Vinson, in 2018. Yeah, it's the coldest, the windiest, and the driest continent. On the summit, it was negative 54 degrees.
I'm sorry, I thought you said negative 54 degrees. I'm using new equipment. I was like, that is hilarious. What did you really say? I'm sorry about that.
I said negative 54.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was cold. At any moment when we got to this summit, I didn't want to take my camera out and take a picture because I thought, I don't want to lose my fingers. I don't care about the picture on the summit.
Yeah.
I'm glad somebody else did take a picture of me, or I didn't have anything to prove that.
Wow. So you have some videos that you've done and some pictures that you've taken, some very beautiful pictures and videos. Can you want to tell us a little bit about some of the documentation, some of the storyline that you've laid down in all the multimedias, including this one today, but videos and books and talks that you've given? What kind of impact are you actually making these days on the world, and how are you expanding what your stand is out there?
Well, after a while of working with the organization Empower Nepali Girls, I realized that since my background, my bachelor's and master's was in electrical engineering, I just thought, I want to get some more knowledge around the area that I'm so passionate about. And I kind of never talked about the reason that I'm so passionate about this cause of women's empowerment and gender equality because I grew up in Iran and I experienced firsthand the oppressive, restrictive environment that makes gender discrimination possible.
Hmm.
And I just saw women around me never achieving their goals, not having the avenue to pursue their dreams. So it was very important for me to kind of give this opportunity to other young women around the world so that they can experience continuing their education, getting a job, being independent. And so I decided to do my PhD 4 years ago in leadership and change and focus on women's leadership in developing countries.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the products of me climbing Everest.
Mm-hmm. And so that's amazing. I didn't know that about you. I guess I want to put together another piece of information. Maybe you can shine a light on this for us. So you grow up in Iran, and you grow up, with just a firsthand view of what doesn't work for you. What doesn't work for any of us really with the gender inequality. And I wonder, like, what is the trek for Sara Safari from Iran to PhD? There must be some summits there, if you will, that you really trek that probably don't appear to be that big now, but for most of us would be a life achievement. Can you tell us a little bit about what your ride was from Iran to PhD?
When I was 20 years old, my family and I, we all moved to United States. And back in Iran, I didn't have much options. My parents always told me you need to study engineering. And when I moved to US, I just continued studying engineering. I kind of didn't know that there are other options in the world. My whole goal in life was to get a job in engineering and have a good paycheck and have a car and have a house. And that was it. I only cared about I'm going to get a good car and a good house and I'll be done. Like that's it. Or
Yeah.
maybe get married and have two kids and that's the end of it.
Right. Check, check, check. Done.
Check, I'm done. Like
Yeah.
I'm really like very soon I realized that I am participating in this boring I'm not gonna say boring, but in this circle of life, which is after this I'm gonna go for a better car, and after that I'm gonna go
Mm.
for one more kid, and then after that
Mm.
I'm gonna go for one more bedroom for the house
Mm.
and then a nicer location. And I
Mm.
just thought this is gonna be a circle, and I'm gonna be sinking, kind of not doing everything only for myself. And I felt that I'm so selfish if I do that.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first spark for me to look into what's out there. How can I get out of this circle? How can
Mm-hmm.
I just do something that is bigger than this? And that's why, in the first place, I participated in landmark courses. I was just searching for an answer because I thought if I continue my life the way I'm continuing my life at that age, I would be they call it successful, and I'm doing quotations here.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm going to be successful, but just for myself.
Yes, yes. A very narrow definition of what the word successful means compared to what you're now taking on in your life.
Yeah, and then so I decided I back then that I don't want to do my PhD because it's gonna be part of the same circle,
Yes.
just more degrees and more degrees. But now the PhD that I'm doing every single day, it's all about how can I use this education to benefit other people. As a part of my PhD right now, I'm creating a leadership workshop for young women, college level women in Nepal. And hopefully, I can expand it to other developing countries and other countries. Before, it was just what I wanted to gain out of PhD was just to benefit myself solely. And now it is how can I use this for other people? And that was the transformation for me.
Absolutely and amazing. We're with Sara Safari today, and if you haven't heard this whole podcast, please go back and listen to it because it's just astonishing. We met in Landmark Education. Although it's not, I'm not here to give a plug for the actual enterprise. Although both of us certainly could for the impact it's made on either in both of our lives. I wonder, you said that you reached a point where the life just looked like it was going to be circular, like cyclical, like a cycle that wasn't going to land on much, and you were looking for something outside of that, and that's how you tripped over Landmark Education. How long ago did you do the Landmark Forum?
2008.
2008 is your first course in Landmark, and then the course that you took that launched you into mountain climbing as a
Yeah, that was Wisdom in 2012.
okay, that was Wisdom in 2012. Wow. One of the things I'm hearing is that the PhD in whatever might have been in the world of engineering, perhaps, it got shifted to being a PhD in leadership.
Mm-hmm.
And, that you're now making a difference in ways that really matter to you and matter to the people around you. Can you pay a little bit more attention, if you will, to what, when you're used by your PhD education rather than doing it in order to, is there a difference in quality that you can notice?
Exactly. Like before, I wasn't, it was kind of, I was pushing, but now I'm being pulled by
Mm,
the whole PhD thing. It's more effortless.
yes.
It's more effortless because I'm so passionate and I love this cause so much. Studying for me for the past 4 years, it has never been a struggle.
Mm,
Even though English is my second language, PhD, all these PhD papers and articles are they use very sophisticated, complex words, and I have to use dictionary 24/7 to understand a whole article. But
hmm
it is so effortless. I'll do it so happily because
Beautiful.
I'm enjoying every single second of it. It's not for me, it's not going to school anymore.
I just imagine, I know that when we first met, I said something like this, but I imagine from inside of you, you can't really notice. I mean, sort of like you're on the moving train called Sara Safari. So you cannot notice the impact and the inspiration that every single one of your activities, how you speak to it, and the level of passion and gentleness and sweetness and contribution that you are for the world around you is just extraordinary. I just thank you for being you. It's just fabulous. And thank you for everything you're doing for the people around you, and also for finding a way to live a life that isn't anything except the way you want to live your life at the same time getting all of that done. It's just fabulous. Really something.
Thank you. Thank you. And I really believe in that everybody on the whole planet, they have a cause, they have something that they can be used by, they can be pulled by. Like for your listeners, I'm sure a lot of them know about the sustainable developmental goals, the 17 SDGs that United Nations in 2015 adopted as the goals for the next 30 years. And it's 17 of them to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure prosperity for all the countries for the whole planet Earth. And before that, it was the millennial goals. So I'm sure there are many people out there, if they look up the 17 SDGs, number 4 is for women and gender equality. That's the one that I'm the most passionate about. But there are so many other ones for climate change, for animals, for all those kind of things. I think any person in the world, if they pick one or two of these 17 SDGs and try to do something really simple towards it. And when I say simple, I really mean simple. Like a lot of people ask me, what should we do for gender equality? We are very passionate about it. And I say, if you see a girl, if you see a woman, they're doing their best, they're trying so hard to put themselves out of their comfort zone, just say thank you to them, just acknowledge them, just tell them that you see how they're trying so hard, and ask them how you can support them. Because I'm passionate about this, but I'm sure there are people who are more passionate about recycling, helping the planet, passionate about the animals, or so many other things. If every single one of us just take a little bit of action and do something towards one of these 17 SDGs, we can accomplish so much. You know, they have estimated that by 2025, 89.5% of the world youth population will be in developing countries. So 90% of the world, of the youth in the world, will be in developing countries.
This
And
is it 5 years from now, yes?
yeah, five
Wow.
years from now.
Mm-hmm.
And so imagine 90% of the youth are in developing countries. People, these young people in developing countries, because I've been working with Nepal, Afghanistan, Iran, I've seen the youth in those countries, and I know how hungry and thirsty they are for our attention, to learn skills and develop themselves. A lot of them want to immigrate to this country, to United States. So this is just the state of the world, and I think we have so many immigrants here in United States, and they can be an asset and provide and be make a little difference in their original country, in the youth around them. I think little by little, this is the next generation that are coming up. We can save the earth this way, and we can save the whole planet. We can inspire our communities and just transform the whole planet.
Wow. It's the way you put it, coming from your 5'4" frame of somebody who's been up 7 summits and really continues to just expand into who you are as a contribution to, gender inequality, and who you are as a contribution to women's empowerment, and who you are just as a inspiration on a daily basis for why we even wake up in the morning, let alone, what we can do or who we can be in a day to make a difference. It's just extraordinary. And I know for me, my life is altering just inside of this interview, where I get reminded that there is a real opportunity to make a difference, and to have that coincide with what matters to me at the same time. Like, actually, those two things aren't two different things. And if I am living passionately down the line that works for me, it's very likely that I can make a massive difference and make a massive contribution to an area of life that matters to many. And I think that's what you represent more than anything for me. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. And younger people in developing countries, they are facing so many problems. They are being forced to early marriage. They face early pregnancy. They face malnutrition. They don't have access to education the way we do here. They don't have access to opportunities the way we do here. They, sexual exploitations, trafficking, HIV, like all these problems that they are facing in developing countries. They, like, when I meet our girls, the 300 girls that we have in Nepal, they are just so resilient, so powerful, so strong. They're pushing through all their difficulties and problems, and they're trying to achieve their goal. So the young people here in the United States, we are facing problems too, but not as much as developing countries. So I think
Yeah.
we don't have excuse. We are responsible and take the opportunities and the privileges that we have here. I think this just gives us more responsibility to take care of ourselves and the rest of the world.
Yes, beautiful. Amen again. Just wonderful. Exactly. So,
Yeah.
Sarah, some of what we do, some of the questions that Ryan and I have developed to ask each and every guest it's already been answered. What tweaks you, and what you're doing about it, what could be done, and what can we, the audience, do to address whatever it is that tweaks you. And I think you've just given us a really beautiful outline of many different ways to be a contribution to the underprivileged or to those who are really asking, the hungry and thirsty for what it is that we might be able to offer, or even as an inspiration to create something new for people that matter, for people to contribute to and to be contributed from. So the other thing I want to really talk about is what's next for you. And I guess all we have next is a little climb up Mount Everest. And then once you get that baby done, what's waiting on the horizon for you? What can we look for from you over the next several years?
That's a very good question. For me, I'm just learning so much every single day, and the world is expanding in directions that I didn't even expect, that I don't know how next year would look like. I'm open to all these, whatever happens. Right now, we are working on a movie, a featured film about the story of the book to help inspire people and raise funds and awareness for empowering women in developing countries. And so the movie is happening. I'm writing my dissertation for my PhD. And then I'm also expanding my speaking business. I've been speaking in different organizations, companies, seminar or conferences. So everything is expanding and growing, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm meeting new amazing friends every day that I've never met before, and I never even had it in my radar. It's beautiful. It's amazing. Every day is a journey, and it's part of the journey. And I don't know, I'm just hoping that I can expand this enough that I can make a bigger difference in the world.
Yeah.
And I can make teams and groups of people in the world who are doing the same thing. Just I want to expand this idea of letting your cause use you and pull you towards life.
Yes,
That's it.
that's great. That's great. And Sara, if people want to keep track of you, if people want to find out what you're up to next, or maybe even, speak with you or write to you, or maybe even work with you or join a cause that you're on, or get assistance with a cause that they might be considering, is that possible? And if so, how can people keep in touch with you, Sara Safari?
Of course, I think the best way is to go on my website, climbyoureverest.org. And in there, I have all my accounts, different accounts, social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, my email, everything is there. People can email me and message me. And I try to be very responsive and answer very quickly. They want to have my email right now. My email is Sara, Sara, at empowernepalligirls.org.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, Sara, what a great way to start off my podcast. Sort of like starting at the summit of Everest and wondering where to go from here if I want to keep going up. So it's just been a deep and honest pleasure to be with you.
Perfect. I really want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to share this story with the rest of the world, with your audience and listeners. I'm very, very thankful. This was an opportunity for me to do one of my favorite things in the world, which is hopefully making a difference here with your listeners. So thank you. I feel so honored, and I am so happy that I have a friend like you. Thank you.
Beautiful. Well, it is an honor indeed in reverse, or along with you, to be friends with you, Sara Safari. I'm Dr. Fred. I'm Dr. Fred as founder of Welcome to Humanity and founder of Global Madness. And I've been here today with Sara Safari. Sara's got an amazing story, amazing contribution, an amazingly beautiful, wonderful person, human, woman, up to really making a difference in so many ways, and doing so with immense amount of commitment and rather effortlessly. And it appears to be effortless. In fact, it's more seamless. And I'm guessing a whole lot of effort goes into it every day. But, when you're up to doing something that matters to you, when you're up to actually being used by something that matters to you, it doesn't translate to effort. And I think that's the point that Sara brought forth earlier. with all that, we're up to making a difference too. We're up to making a difference in the world of mental health and mental illness. And that's what calls me forward. And that's what calls the people that work with me forward. If there's anything that is driving you forward, can you think of something that if that occurred, that would be something that would make your life worthwhile? I think you're hearing from both Sara and me that there's no time better than today to actually take that on as being what's important. Living a life that's just going to end up not working out for you is always an option, except really you only have one life. And the opportunity really exists to make a huge difference on the planet just by living exactly what's important to you. So with all of that said, I just want to say this is Dr. Fred at welcometohumanity.net. It's been a pleasure to launch my inaugural podcast with my good friend Ryan Levesque and with my first guest star, Sara Safari. So with that, I'm going to bid you all farewell. Thanks again, Sara. Thanks again, Ryan. Really, really wonderful to get started with you. And I wish you all just a beautiful day, a beautiful week, a beautiful rest of your life. I love you. Be good. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Something I really loved about this interview with Sara today is all about her courage. I mean, I really appreciated what she said about how things just seem to escalate step after step, and that she still doesn't see herself as necessarily courageous, just following steps into what is calling her. But my goodness, if you're not her, and none of us are, what an incredibly courageous woman. So an insight that really struck me from today's show was just follow your dream. Just follow what matters to you. Do not be afraid of what's going on around you, or if you are, simply take it with you into the unknown and create what's important. Leave yourself making a difference for the world around you. Something I intend to try or implement based on today's conversation with Sara is exactly that. I'm expanding who I am in the world. My interest, my commitment is to be a listening such that everybody knows that their voice can be heard and that who they are and what they do matters. And I really am committed to the core of myself to making that happen for the people around me and then the people around them. So I'm committed to stepping off into the unknown and using Sara as a primary example going forward. So perhaps as you were listening, you might have thought of a person or maybe even 2 or 3 or 4 people that need to hear this episode with Sara Safari. Why not reach out to them right now and invite them to listen, to subscribe to the Welcome to Humanity podcast? And speaking of subscribing, I'd like to ask a favor of you, very large in terms of impact on me and the show and people around you. First, could you please take a moment to hit the subscribe button on your podcast player? That way you'll get the latest episodes as they become available. And second, if you really appreciate what we do here, could you just take 5 minutes to leave a review on Apple Podcasts? That sure would be deeply appreciated. Subscribing and reviewing are 2 major ways we can reach more listeners with the Welcome to Humanity podcast. And if this conversation we have here contributes to your life, please pay it forward by subscribing and then leaving a review. I and my team would be truly grateful for your support. And to catch up with past episodes, head on over to welcometohumanity.net. That's welcometohumanity.net/podcast. So until next time, this is Dr. Fred, and this has been the Welcome to Humanity podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I love you. Have a great day. Until we meet again, au revoir.